question.
Mm-hmm.
President Obama just recently announced his new plan to exert diplomatic pressures on Sudan and stated that if this was proved to be not enough, then they would reconsider and maybe elevate the plan. What do you think would be necessary, whether new information from Sudan or action taken by the American public, in order to make the Obama administration consider more strict action?
I think at this point, the new Sudan policy, the Obama administration, which is highly belated, yet again, a year ago, I wrote an op-ed in the Christian Science Monitor saying, right after Obama won, saying, you can't wait to fashion a Sudan policy. You need to act now. You need to have in place, day one, a means of pressuring this regime to stop the harassment of humanitarian workers, to stop the abuse of humanitarian workers, to improve access to the camps, to stop efforts to impede the UN African Union mission in Darfur, UNAMID, this hybrid peacekeeping force, which is really only half its strength, operational strength. So they've waited way too long, in my view, a year. They knew about Darfur. They talked about Darfur. In the campaign trail, Obama had been quite vociferous. I think the key at this point, though, in terms of ratcheting up pressure, is going to come, if it comes at all, yet again from other countries, Europeans in particular. And there, I'm not very optimistic. The Obama administration has relatively few sticks left. There are some economic sanctions, we can make it much more difficult for Sudan to conduct international trade, make the dollar a much more difficult currency for it to transact its business with. But in the abstract, the policy as articulated makes sense, but the confidentiality of the sticks and carrots is perhaps defensible, but leaves us really not in a position to say that things are that we really have the tools we need. I think there are a number of things we should be doing. We haven't talked at all about South Sudan, but the elections that are scheduled for April 2010 are just not going to happen. They're not going to be meaningful elections. They can't be. We're way too close to April 2010, which throws the focus on the Southern self-determination referendum of early 2011. That's where we should be focusing now, because if the South returns to war, there will be no peace in Sudan, including Darfur. So I think General Scott Gratian, who is a special envoy and has chosen a much too conciliatory attitude dealing with Khartoum, didn't quite get his knuckles wrapped, but was steered away from the absurd language of giving candy and stickers and other rewards to a regime saying that they'll behave better. No. The Khartoum regime, the National Islamic Front, National Congress Party, has survived as long as it has by having a policy of taking any carrots that are proffered, eating them, and then thumbing their noses at those who made the offer. The regime has never abided by a single agreement it has ever made with any Sudanese party. Not one agreement, not ever. They have to be of a very specific sort. We have a referendum law that needs to be passed, needs to be tabled. That hasn't happened. The census is a mess. visas are still being held up for UNIMID soldiers and personnel. Humanitarians are still abused badly. Let's start saying this has to change, and it has to change by such and such a date, as in tomorrow. Some things are more complicated than others. The census, for example, which shows a 400% increase in the Arab population of South Darfur, is just patently absurd. Well, you can't fix a census; it's too complicated overnight. But you can allow the committee that's charged with delineating the north-south border to proceed unharassed. Right now, in Abyei, an area in western Sudan, the demarcation is being deliberately obstructed. This should stop tomorrow. It could stop tomorrow if there were U.S. pressure. General Gratian tried to persuade Salva Kiir, the president of South Sudan, to delay the self-determination referendum. Well, I've traveled in South Sudan, and I can tell you that the people there have no interest in delay, and frankly, they have no interest in staying part of Sudan as it's presently constituted. The vote would be overwhelmingly for secession if it were held today, tomorrow, or in January 2011. Unity was supposed to have been made attractive. Well, that hasn't happened. Khartoum bears the responsibility for that. Long answer to your question.